Okay, I'll share my screen. So last week we were in chapter 41, halfway through, volume 2, chapter 41. Mr. N could not know what motives were driving Srila Prabhupada, nor could he imagine the full ramifications of opposing Krishna and Krishna's pure devotee. Even though the danger of such a position had been explained in India's most famous classics, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Ramayana, Prabhupada was fighting on the side of Krishna, therefore, Mr. N was opposing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By Prabhupada's disciples' cancellation of the agreement, ISKCON's legal position had been weakened, but Prabhupada had faith that if the devotees just maintained possession of the land, their position would remain strong. At the same time, he urged the devotees to preach more. They should not think that without a temple they could not preach, so he arranged for another big Bombay Pandal festival downtown, which proved to be a great success with 20,000 attending nightly. Important guests like Mr. R.K. Ganatra, the mayor of Bombay, made introductory speeches, and the devotees also took an active part organizing, advertising, cooking, and distributing prasadam, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, and preaching at a question and answer booth. The Pandal festival served to lift the devotees out of doldrums of their protracted legal fight and the austerity of the living at Juhu. During the last week of January 1973, Prabhupada met with Mr. N at the residence of Mr. Mahadevia. Although Prabhupada's lawyers had filed a criminal case against Mr. N, Prabhupada wanted to attempt an out-of-court settlement. He had always been gracious and charming with Mr. N, and Mr. N had always appeared responsive and polite. But this time was different. Gone were the smiles and friendly words. The two were remaining barely civil to each other. After a few minutes, Prabhupada asked his disciples to leave the room. Speaking in Hindi, Mr. N began accusing Prabhupada and the devotees of being connected with the CIA. I will come on Monday, said Mr. N tersely, with a check for 2 lakhs to pay back your down payment. All right, Prabhupada replied, if you don't want to part with your land, then we will leave. But think before you do this. Mr. N continued his accusations. You people are calling yourselves the owners of the land, but you are just as a big disturbance to the whole area, getting up at 4 and all this. We do not claim to be the owner, Prabhupada replied. Krishna is the real owner. I am not the real owner. Krishna is already there on his land. Why are you bothering us so much? Simply take the money and give us the land. Or if you want us to vacate, then prepare the check. Prabhupada had speaking with restraint, but now his tone became angry. Bring out your check and we will vacate tomorrow morning. No, we will vacate tonight. Give us our money, have you the money. Mr. N shouted, I will remove the deities myself, I will break the temple and remove the deities. Mr. N then stormed out of the room. That week, Mr. N was hospitalized after a severe heart attack. 2 weeks later, he died. When Prabhupada heard of Mr. N's death, he was at first silent. Then he quoted a verse Prahalad Maharaj had spoken following the death of his demonic father, Hiranyakashipu, Modeta Sadur Api, Vrishchika Sarpahatya. Even a saint is pleased when a snake or scorpion is killed. Miss N, although not as legally astute as her late husband, carried on the fight, and her lawyers, eager to collect their fees, pursued even more intently than she the litigation to drive out ISKCON. In April 1973, at ISKCON's instigation, ISKCON's case came before the High Court. There were tactical delays, however, and month after month passed with no decision. Prabhupada did not commit himself to construction on the land because he had no deed and no assurance of one. He toured the West, returned to India, but still nothing had happened to resolve the matter. Life in ISKCON Bombay was peaceful, but progress remains stunted, the outcome uncertain. Then one day, without warning, Mrs. N launched a violent attack. On the morning of June 1st, while the devotees were attending their routine duties, a truck drove onto the Juhu property. A demolition squad had come to dismantle the temple. Somehow, Miss N had convinced an official in the city government to authorize demolition of the temple, a modest structure of brick and steel reinforced concrete. When Giriraj attempted to show the officer in charge a letter establishing ISKCON's rights, the man ignored the letter and signaled for the demolition to begin. Soon more trucks arrived until nearly 100 demolitionists working with blowtorches and sledgehammers swarmed over the property. The demolitionists mounted ladders and began breaking the roof of the temple hall with sledgehammers. Others used torches to cut through the steel supports. The plan of the demolition squad was to knock out the steel supports of the Kirtana hall and proceed methodically towards the deity house, wherein Radha Rasbihari stood. The devotees tried to stop the demolition, but policemen soon appeared on the scene and, working in pairs, would grab the dissenters by the legs and arms and carry them away. Police dragged the woman away by the hair while tenants on the land looked on. Some were glad to see the demolition, although others were sympathetic. Out of fear of the police, however, no one moved to help the devotees. One devotee, Manishvi, ran to a telephone and called Mr. Mahadevia, who, along with his friend Mr. Vinod Gupta, rushed to Hare Krishna land to find the police dragging off the last protesting devotee by the hair. She had been trying to close the doors to the altar to protect the deities when three policemen had wrestled her away. Mr. Mahadevia rushed to the house of sympathetic tenant Mr. Acharya and phoned his brother Chandra Mahadevia, a wealthy businessman and friend of Bahal Thakura, a leader of one of the most influential political parties in Bombay. Mr. Chandra Mahadevia informed Bal Thakura of the emergency at the instigation of a Hindu, and under the order of a Hindu municipal officer, a Hindu temple of Lord Vishnu was being demolished. Mr. Thakura in turn informed the municipal commissioner, who denied knowing of any order to demolish the temple, and who in turn phoned the local ward office that had sent out the demolition squad. The ward office sent a man to stop the demolition. The officer arrived around 2 p.m., just as the demolition squad had cut through the last pillars and were dismantling the roof above the deities. The order to stop the demolition was given to the ward officer in charge, who then stopped the demolition squad. Prabhupada was in Calcutta at the time of the attack, and when the devotees reached him by phone, he told them to organize the local ISKCON sympathizers and life members in protest attack by mass publicity. They should also expose the persons responsible. This would be very effective against Miss N and her party. Prabhupada mentioned various life members he thought would help. Mr. Sada Jivatlal, the head of Hindu Vishwa Parishad, should help with publicity, since his organization was a defender of Hindu Dharma and was meant for handling such cases as this. Mr. Sethi should help in preventing further violence. This episode, Prabhupada said, had been part of Krishna's plan. The devotees should not be afraid. The next morning, a photo of the demolished temple appeared on the front page of the Free Press Journal with the headline, "Unauthorized Temple Demolished by Municipal Authorities." Devotees began counteracting the bad publicity. Mr. Sada Jivatlal turned his downtown office into an ISKCON office, and he and the devotees began the campaign. Despite the unfavorable propaganda, many Indians were shocked at the violence, and the municipal corporation unanimously condemned those officials responsible for the attack on a Hindu temple. Devotees working from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Sada Jivatlal's office phoned the newspapers, wrote letters and circulars, and contacted possible sympathizers. Mr. Vinod Gupta, a member of the Jan Sangh political party, which favored maintaining India's Hindu culture, joined with Kartikeya Mahadevia and others to form a Save the Temple committee. Mr. Gupta published his own leaflet declaring ISKCON to be a bona fide Hindu organization. As Giriraj met with and elicited the support of the government officials, many of the Bombay's leading citizens, appreciating the authenticity of the Hare Krishna movement, began to show sympathy and offer assistance. Thus, the plan of Miss N and her lawyers backfired. Although they had been thinking they were dealing with only a mere handful of young foreigners, they soon found themselves facing many of the Bombay's most influential citizens. Śrīla Prabhupada predicted that the results would be positive, and a few days after the incident, he wrote, "The demolition of our temple by the municipality has strengthened our position. The municipality standing committee has condemned the hasty action of the municipality and has agreed to reconstruct the shed at their cost. Not only that, the temporary construction shall continue to stay until the court decision is there as to who is the proprietor of the land. Under the circumstances, we should immediately reconstruct the deity shed Barbed wire fencing should be immediately done to cover the naked land. And if possible, immediately in front of the deity shed, a temporary pandal should be constructed with our materials. If it is so done, then I can go to Bombay and begin Bhagavat Parayana to continue until the court decision is there. This is my desire. Prabhupada also asked Giriraja to give full coverage of the temple demolition in his Hare Krishna monthly journal to life members. Prabhupada himself wrote an article for the monthly describing his movement and the events leading to attack on the temple. He condemned the Bombay municipality for having the audacity to smash our temple against the law and the principle of religious faith. A cliche in Bombay, he said, had conspired to drive the devotees from their land without returning their money, and he asked for sympathizers and life members of Krishna consciousness movement to come forward and help him at this difficult hour. Only about a dozen ISKCON life members responded to Śrīla Prabhupada's call. There were hundreds of life members in Bombay, each of whom had donated 1,111 rupees and were receiving Prabhupada's books. But when it came to a personal commitment in a time of controversy, only a few were willing to help. Those who did not help, however, were able to assist in ways that the innocent, naive, and uninfluential disciples of Prabhupada could not. The devotees began to see the entire course of the event as Krishna's mercy, since many life members were now rendering valuable service to Prabhupada and Lord Krishna. In the past, Prabhupada had stayed in the homes of many life members, preaching to them and their families, convincing them of his sincerity and of the noble aims of his movement. These friends and members like Bhagubai Patel, Baharilal Khandelwala, Brij Ratan Mohatta, Dr. C. Bali, and others were acting not simply out of Hindu sentiment but out of deep respect and affection for Prabhupada. Giriraj, working with Sada Jivatlal, tried to convince the municipal council to authorize the rebuilding of the temple structure. While doing so, however, he discovered that Miss N had that very day, a Friday, filed for a court injunction preventing ISKCON from rebuilding. Justice Nain told Giriraja that he did not want to grant Miss N's request and that he would hear the devotees' case on the following Monday. This meant that the devotees had from Saturday morning to Monday morning 2 days to rebuild the temple. The devotees reasoned that although they had no actual permission to rebuild the temple, there was yet no law to stop them. If Justice Nain ruled against them, then to rebuild would be very difficult. They decided therefore to use the weekend to rebuild. Mr. Lal, a former contractor, helped arrange materials, bricks, mortar, asbestos sheets. Mr. Sethi offered a crew of laborers. At 8 p.m. on Friday, the masons began their work, continuing throughout the night despite the rain. And on Monday morning, when the judge learned of the new temple, he declared, "What is built, no one can destroy the temple." When Prabhupada heard the news, he considered it as a complete victory. The temple had been rebuilt, and the public opinion was swinging strongly in ISKCON's favor. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for reading today. I mean, it's special today, but yeah, you took that opportunity to read. Huh? Yeah.
I mean, it's with blessings of all our pure bliss times group and Vaishnavas on this auspicious day. Maybe I could at least try.
Yeah. Right. You all are good?
Yes, Mataji, we are good. So you did not go to the temple today?
No, actually, I'm not well. So.
Okay. So Mataji, I'll just stop the live streaming once.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, let us conclude the chapter by offering our obeisances once again to Śrīla Prabhupada. It was because of him, perhaps the biggest spiritual revolution on the face of the earth, as His Holiness Indridim Swami Maharaj says in his offering. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.